Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. And He will lift you up higher and higher, and He
elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Than thousands elsewhere. I would see to see your beauty, to find you in worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you.
Love to love
How do we grow? By strength or resolve? Can we make it so? Can we shape the course of our lives according to our purpose and designs? Or add a single hour to the measure of our time? How can we ever venture into what is unknown when we are incapable of the smallest change on our own? Looking back over the span of our lives, we can see the marks that testify to how far we've come, how much we've grown, how much of His grace we have been shown. The marks of maturity on our lives, the evidence of the work of Christ, the seed that He has planted in our heart. The Lord has also watered and will refine every part. It is His intention to give it growth until it comes to fruition. He has sealed it with His oath, that He who began this good work in you will see it through. In this lies our hope, not in what we do. But we do not grow alone. Our roots are intertwined, one with another, so that your strength is mine. While we wait in expectation, no growth can be seen. The tender shoots that so quickly spring up must grow strong, lest they remain frail and green. Would we be overwhelmed by perils in store that His timing seeks to prepare us for? Let us endure our trials with patience, for it's in His goodness that we trust, and hold fast to our commitment, resting in His faithfulness to us. His goal is for our good. On this our assurance falls, that He who began this good work will surely make it grow tall.
Hello once again, everybody. I'm glad you could make it to this talk. Once again, I'm Jared Frost, or Frosty, and I am here to talk to you on our second devotional about binging with Jesus and what we can do about it. And if we're going to spend more time with Jesus, then we need to recognize that there's going to be distractions that come our way. And, well, it's not like we have to worry about many distractions during this time of COVID and isolation, right? Listen, I get it. I get it when it comes to distractions, especially during this time of the pandemic. See, I'm a finished college student. I just finished out this year, for good or for worse. And I'm just going to share a small bit of my story with that during this last few couple of weeks, well now months now, and it just might sound a little familiar to you. Well, here's the reality. I'm an extrovert, and if you're an extrovert, the pandemic was an entirely different experience for you than if you were an introvert. You see, for me, there's nothing better, right? I'm lying about that, by the way. It was very hard. It was very hard to go through this pandemic, especially because for the first 6 weeks of it, I was alone. And when I mean that, as in I was living by myself in an apartment without anybody else and without contact really with any other human being for 6 full-on weeks before my roommate returned back from his own travels. And so I was just existing in this strange limbo with nothing going on, and you would think that would be a prime environment to getting school done, but it's not. The reality is that when we're alone, especially for extroverts but also for introverts, when we're alone for too long, we begin to break down. we begin to lose sight of what matters. We begin to forget why we're doing things in the first place. And I found myself slipping in my studies, and if you were a student throughout this pandemic, in high school or in college, I think you probably feel what I'm talking about. It became intrinsically harder to focus on school, right? It was like, man, I'm home all the time. Why should I be doing school? I should just be doing whatever I feel like doing. I just want to binge Netflix or go outside or do a project that I want to do instead of doing the things that I'm expected of doing. And so I found myself in this constant perpetuated procrastination, where I'd wake up and I'd put things off until the last minute, and sometimes I'd put them beyond the last minute. And of course that wasn't very good for my grades, and I kept on talking to myself, and I was like, man, aren't I supposed to be graduating? What am I doing with myself? Why am I doing this? It's ridiculous, right? Procrastination's ridiculous. But we all go through it. We all face that issue of procrastination. We all face that not consuming nastiness that tries to pull us down. And when it begins to pull us down, we begin to heap shame on ourselves, telling ourselves that, man, maybe we're not good enough. Maybe we shouldn't succeed. And maybe things just don't matter anymore. And I found myself slipping into that depression. And it took so much effort to even try and take a step out of it. Frankly, this pandemic season for me was probably one of the most depressed states I've ever been in. I didn't want to do anything, and I felt like a complete failure and a letdown, because it became so much more and more and more about me. I was getting so deep inside of my own head that I couldn't see the bigger picture. I couldn't see that God has a plan laid out for me and for you. He has an entire world set full of adventure and change and experiences. And I just couldn't seem to see it. I was becoming blind to the life I was living. I was becoming blind to Jesus. And that's okay. That's really okay. Because we all go through these problems, these lapses, because we're human. And because it's just not a good situation. And sometimes life gives you tough situations, and you just don't get an easy card with it, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. But there's good news for me, just as there's good news for you. See, if you've been going through the pandemic and feeling as if you've dropped the ball on responsibilities, unable to focus, stop beating yourself up. Stop doing it. Because you're not alone. And it's fine. We all go through the tough stuff. And, well, God is working. God is working through us. God is with us. He doesn't abandon us. Regardless of your lowest point that you may have experienced in this pandemic or in any other point in your life, Jesus Christ is accepting you. And there's a verse in the Bible, and I'm sure you've heard of it, and if you haven't, you're about to. But this verse in the Bible speaks to the reality of God's love for you and for me. And it reads in John 3:16 through 17 in the NIV version. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. A couple things to unpack there. God loves the world. He loves you who live in the world. He sent his only Son, who is God incarnate, down into the world to die for you and for me. Our sin, every wrongdoing that we have ever achieved in the history of humanity, between every single individual that has ever existed, and every sin and mistake and pain that has occurred or is going to occur, all of that was placed on the shoulders of Jesus Christ, and it died with him. It died with him. Any sin that you can conceptualize, gone. Your sin is free from you, if only you choose to accept that. And allow that acceptance, that grace, the grace of Jesus Christ, to transform your life one baby step at a time. We are called to look to Jesus because we were created to be in unity with Jesus. See, and I'm bringing this up because when we get stuck in our distractions, we begin to challenge our self-worth. We begin to say things like, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm just the sum of my mistakes, maybe I can't focus on Jesus because there's something flawed in me. And you know what? Yes, sin is in you and it's broken who we were supposed to be, but through the offer of Jesus' grace, that brokenness can come together once again. You, my friend, are not alone, and Jesus is calling out to you. Yes, you. Calling to fix your brokenness, calling to pull you onto this life of adventure, this life of spending time with him. When we were made to be in unity with God. We were made by God to be here on this earth. And we know this story. We know that sin entered the world, and that reality was fractured and filled with some horrible and terrible consequences. And let's never butter that up. There are bad things in this world. But never once has God stopped trying to save you and me, to fix those same terrible problems, to bring love. And that love is real. I'm going to tell you another story. A story of me climbing a mountain. See, this was my first time climbing South Sister. It's over in the Cascade Range, over in Central Oregon. And it's a beautiful mountain. It's wonderful. And it's really not a challenging hike in the sense that it's a hike. You don't have to have any specific gear per se. You should probably have some kind of pack and some water and maybe some light food that can help keep up your energy. But other than that, as long as you've got proper sun protection, some good some good stuff for the weather, you're going to be okay. It's not like you're mountaineering. It's not like you're rock climbing. South Sister is, by all accounts, a fairly easy mountain. But there is something uniquely challenging about South Sister, and that is long, and it's all uphill. And this is my first time climbing this mountain, and this would have been a couple years ago now, and it was when I was working at Big Lake Youth Camp for the summer. And so I decided to head out with a group of my friends, and there was 11 of us. It was a rather big group to be climbing a mountain. And we decided to set out early in the morning and try to see about getting up there. And so off we went along this long and huge trek, and I was feeling really confident. I was like, okay, we're gonna do it. And so we set to it. And we're climbing and we're climbing and we're climbing, and the beautiful scenery is everywhere, and you can just see the majesty. But As is often the case when you're climbing anything for an extended period of time, the pain of exhaustion starts settling in. You can feel it in your calves, in your thighs, and your hips, and your back, and your shoulders, as you're just moving up and up and up and up. And the sun's beating down on you, and you're feeling sweat drip down your brow. And suddenly your focus starts falling to your feet. You're watching your feet take steps after step, and all you're seeing is that, and you're not looking around at everything else. And I noticed that some of my friends, they kept on trying to take these huge, big steps. These giant strides forward and forward, and then before they knew it, they were exhausted. They felt like they just couldn't keep going. They were trying to do too much on this mountain, and they'd have to stop and stop and stop. And so to counter that, I started taking small little baby steps, one at a time. And I found that I could suddenly start ignoring the feeling of being tired, and I could start looking right and left, and I could see the majesty all around me. And though my steps were smaller than everybody else's, I was able to work higher and higher and higher up that mountain until I was a good mile ahead of everybody else. I eventually reached the top of that mountain, and I could see for miles as if I was on the roof of the world. Friends, I know it's hard. Sometimes we feel the adversity of life and the desire to give up. But you can make it to the mountaintop. Sometimes all it takes is taking some baby steps. And though you might see other people making giant strides, and sometimes you want to make giant strides, if you're making small progress, one step at a time, you're gonna make it to the mountaintop. You were made to be loved, and you were made to experience the wonders of this wide world, to see it through the lens of a creator who cares about you and your intrinsic identity. You are in a world that has been gifted to you, not to dominate, but to steward, to take care of, experience. You are called to love one another and to find completion in that love.